David does not ask God to forgive him. The Hebrew word at the center of Psalm 51 is Machah. It does not mean to pardon, it does not mean to absolve, it means to obliterate, to wipe out so completely that the thing being wiped ceases to have ever existed. David is not asking a righteous judge to show mercy inside the legal system. He is asking a righteous judge to destroy the court record, to behave as though the crime never happened, to unmake the evidence. And the most unsettling thing about Psalm 51 is not what David did. It is that he believed this request could be granted. We are going to read Psalm 51 the way it was actually written, not as a confession template, not as a devotional, not as a Sunday school story about a king who made a mistake and learned from it. We are going to read it as a legal document produced by a man who understood exactly what he was demanding, a man who had committed adultery, who had arranged a murder, who had spent an unknown period of months telling himself it was manageable, until a prophet walked into the throne room and the denial collapsed. The word Machah appears 3 times in this psalm. Each time, it is doing something that no standard translation captures. It is not requesting forgiveness inside a system. It is requesting the dismantling of the system's ability to record the crime. That is what this video is about. Psalm of David, when Nathan the prophet came to him after he had gone in to Bathsheba. Written, a Psalm of David, when Nathan the prophet came to him after he had gone in to Bathsheba. The superscription is doing critical work. It is not decorating the poem. It is placing the poem at the precise moment of psychological rupture, the moment the lie David had been maintaining collapsed under external pressure. The facts are these. David was the king of a united Israel at the height of his power. He saw Bathsheba bathing on a rooftop and sent for her. She was already married to Uriah the Hittite, one of David's own elite soldiers. David took her. When Bathsheba became pregnant, David attempted a cover-up, summoning Uriah from the front lines in the hope that he would sleep with his wife and the paternity would become ambiguous. Uriah refused as a matter of military honor to enjoy domestic comforts while his comrades were in the field. David had him placed at the front of the heaviest fighting and then ordered the troops around him to withdraw. Uriah died. David took Bathsheba as his wife. The narrative in 2 Samuel describes this sequence and then records a single sentence that carries its full weight. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. Some unknown period of time passes. The text does not tell us how long. Scholars suggest months. Long enough for the child to be born, long enough for the court to have absorbed the new arrangement, long enough for David to have told himself, in the way that powerful men tell themselves things, that the problem was resolved. Then Nathan the prophet arrives with a parable. A rich man steals a poor man's only lamb. David is furious. He pronounces a death sentence on the rich man. Nathan looks at him and says, "You are the man." That is the moment Psalm 51 comes from. Not the sin itself, the confrontation. The instant the architecture of the denial falls apart and David is standing in the full weight of what he has done, with no way to undo it and nowhere to go with it. This psalm is classified among the penitential psalms, a category of 7 in the tradition, psalms of contrition and lament over sin. But Psalm 51 is different from the others in a way that most commentaries understate. The others ask for relief. Psalm 51 asks for something structurally different. And to understand what, you need the Hebrew. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. According to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions. Verse 1. The psalm begins with an appeal to divine character. Chesed, the covenantal loving kindness, and Rachamim, the deep mercies, the word rooted in the Hebrew for womb. David is not appealing to God's judicial leniency. He is appealing to God's relational identity, to the character that preceded the law. And then the request, blot out my transgressions. Machah. The root of this word carries a physical image, the act of wiping a surface clean, but it is not a gentle wipe. The same word is used in Genesis 6:7 when God surveys creation before the flood and says, "I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land." The vocabulary of divine annihilation, the vocabulary of unmaking. David is not asking to have his transgressions pardoned within the system. He is asking to have them treated as though they never entered the system, as though the court record were wiped clean, not sealed, not expunged through due process, but destroyed. This is an entirely different category of request. Pardon acknowledges the crime and releases the penalty. Machah asks the judge to behave as though the crime has no existence. For a righteous judge, this should be impossible. A righteous judge is bound by truth, and the truth is that Uriah is dead. The truth is that Bathsheba was taken. The truth is that the chain of decisions existed. A judge who acts against this truth is no longer righteous, and a judge who refuses leaves David with nowhere left to go. This is the structural impossibility at the center of Psalm 51. David is not confused about what he is asking. He is making a request that the righteousness of God should forbid, and he is making it anyway because there is nowhere else to go. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. Verse 2 extends the request with two additional verbs. The word for wash here carries the image of treading, of a physical violence applied to fabric in order to force a stain out, not a rinse, a beating. David is asking to be subjected to whatever process is necessary, however violent, to remove what cannot be gently cleaned. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. Verse 3 tells us something important about the psychological state the psalm is coming from. David is not confessing in order to inform God of something God does not know. He is confessing because the awareness of what he has done is constant. The sin is not behind him, it is ever before him, in front of his eyes at every moment. This is not guilt in the abstract. This is the specific lived experience of a thing that will not stop being visible. Against you, you only, have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight, so that you may be justified in your verdict and blameless in your judgment. Verse 4 is the most theologically precise sentence in the psalm. David acknowledges Uriah, he acknowledges Bathsheba, and then he says the sin is against God only. This is not a denial of the human damage. It is a statement about where the ultimate accounting must be made. Every human wrong is at its root a wrong against the moral order that God underwrites. And David is doing something else here. He is acknowledging that God is justified in condemning him. He is not arguing for his own innocence. He is confessing that if God judges him, the judgment is correct. This matters because it removes the possibility of legal defense. David is not going to argue mitigating circumstances. He is not going to produce character witnesses. He is conceding the verdict before it is formally delivered, and then, having conceded it, still asking for Machah, still asking for the record to be destroyed. Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Verse 5 is frequently misread as a statement about original sin in the doctrinal sense. It is something more specific and more devastating. David is not constructing a theology of universal human guilt to distribute responsibility for his actions. He is saying that what he has done is not an anomaly, it is the expression of something that has been present since before he could choose. The capacity for this was built into his nature, which means the problem is not a bad decision that can be corrected. The problem is structural. It goes all the way down. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Verse 10 is where the request shifts. The word for create here is Bara, the word used in Genesis 1 for the act of divine creation from nothing. David is not asking for renovation. He is not asking for improvement. He is asking for an act of original creation performed on his interior life. He is asking God to treat his inner world the way God treated the void at the beginning, and to make something from it that did not previously exist. This is the request behind the request. Machah asks for the record to be destroyed. Bara asks for a new person to exist who did not do what the record describes. Together they form the impossible architecture of Psalm 51. Obliterate what was, create what never existed. Cast me not away from your presence, and take not your Holy Spirit from me. Verse 11. David has held positions of power for decades. He has commanded armies. He has written psalms. And here, at the bottom of the most honest thing he has ever written, the fear that surfaces is not the fear of punishment. It is the fear of absence. The fear of losing access to whatever it is that has been present when he was closest to God. He would rather face the consequences of what he has done in the presence of God than escape the consequences and lose the presence. This is the register of a man who has understood what actually matters, which is perhaps the only sign in the entire psalm that anything has genuinely changed. For you will not delight in sacrifice, or I would give it. You will not be pleased with a burnt offering. Verse 16. This is the moment the psalm breaks open in a different direction entirely. David has been a king inside a sacrificial system his entire life. The Levitical architecture, the animal offerings, the ritual purifications, the prescribed responses to specific categories of sin was built by God as the mechanism for handling human transgression. And David is saying here that it cannot reach what he has done. He is not rejecting the system as false. He is identifying something the system was not designed to process. There are categories of sin for which the prescribed remedy is inadequate, not because the remedy failed, but because the sin has exceeded the system's capacity. David knows this. He is not performing humility. He is making a technical observation about the limits of the mechanism. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. Verse 17. This is not comfort. This is the only remaining option after the system has been ruled out. There is no animal to bring. Here is the problem Psalm 51 leaves us with, and it is a real problem. David makes the request. The psalm ends. We do not get a verdict. There is no divine response recorded in the text. There is no moment where God says, Machah granted, record destroyed. The psalm simply ends, with David having said everything he could say, having offered everything he had left to offer, which was nothing, and waiting. Most biblical commentary moves quickly past this silence. It imports the theological resolution. David was forgiven. The line of grace continued. The Messiah descended from David and uses that resolution to smooth over the unresolved texture of the psalm itself. But the psalm was not written from the vantage point of that resolution. It was written at the bottom, and it stays there. What Psalm 51 actually describes is a man who has discovered something that most religious frameworks work very hard to keep people from discovering, that there exists a category of action for which the normal mechanisms of repair are insufficient, not sins that require more contrition or more time or a better apology. Sins that have exceeded the system's design parameters, sins that created irreversible conditions. Uriah is dead. That does not change. Bathsheba lost her husband. That does not change. David's son, born of this situation, will die. The text tells us this. The consequences are not erased by the prayer. They run their full course. And yet the prayer is made. Machah, obliterate the record. Create something new where there was nothing but ruin. The contemporary parallel is not difficult to locate. Most people, by the time they are adults, have done something they cannot undo. Not a mistake that can be corrected with a better decision, a thing that has entered the world and changed it irreversibly in ways that affect other people. And the question that moment creates is exactly the question at the center of Psalm 51. Is there a mechanism that can reach this? And if the standard mechanisms cannot reach it, if the apology is insufficient, if the restitution is impossible, if the ritual is inadequate, then what? David does not answer this question. He asks it at the bottom of his capacity and then goes silent. The midpoint of this video is the right place to say directly, if you are watching this channel because you have found yourself in that room, the room where the normal remedies have run out, subscribe to Forgotten Canon. We don't offer easy peace here. We read the texts they didn't teach you. And we do not look away from the parts that have no clean resolution. There is one more dimension of Psalm 51 that deserves naming before we close. The psalm contains, embedded in verses 13 through 15, a vow. David says, "Then I will teach transgressors your ways, and sinners will return to you." He says, "My tongue will sing aloud of your righteousness." He says, "My mouth will declare your praise." These verses are sometimes read as triumphant, as evidence that the prayer has been answered and the restoration is complete. But the verbs are conditional and future. Then I will, then I will. When the Machah has happened, when the Bara has happened, when there is something new where the ruin was, then. David is not reporting a completed transformation. He is naming what he would do if the request were granted. He is offering the only thing he has left, his future voice, as a pledge against a mercy he has not yet received. The psalm is not a testimony, it is a bet, made from the floor, against odds that David himself has already acknowledged are structurally impossible. The prayer ends, the record still exists, the consequences are still running, Uriah is still dead, the child will still die, and David has to wake up the next morning. What does a man do the morning after making a request he cannot verify was granted? What does it mean to have placed everything on an act of divine Machah, obliteration that leaves no evidence of itself by definition? If the record is destroyed, you cannot check the record. If the evidence is gone, there is no evidence of its absence. You wake up in the same body, in the same palace, with the same history, and you do not know. That is the question Psalm 51 leaves open, not as a failure of the text, as the honest shape of what it describes. And if Psalm 51 is the prayer of one man making an impossible request from the floor of his own ruin, what happens when it is not a one man, but an entire nation? A people who have lost everything, who are sitting in the wreckage of a history they cannot undo, crying out from a depth so total that the Hebrew word they use is not a metaphor. That is Psalm 130, and that is where we go next.